Welcome to another episode of The Horrific Podcast. We're two musicians who used to play in a band together and share a passion for scary movies. Each week we pick a different horror movie and dissect it to figure out what it was trying to accomplish, how well it did, and maybe even some larger truths about why people watch horror movies in the first place. If you haven't seen the movie we're talking about, then don't worry. The first half of the episode will be pretty high level and spoiler free, and then we'll play a warning before we start talking about any major plot twists in the ending. Thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoy the episode. And here we are continuing with our very special series about The Haunting of Hill House.
Haunting of Hill House.
So if you are a new listener, or if you didn't listen to our last episode, then this one's going to be a little different than our normal format. Normally we have both watched a horror movie, and then we go through it and talk about sort of how it was made and everything, and then we do play a spoiler warning, and then we get into discussion about the details and specific scenes and stuff. If you want to hear a spoiler-free discussion of The Haunting of Hill House, then go back and listen to the previous episode, and that's where we'll have that discussion. This week, we're going to dive in and talk all about episodes 1 and 2, and then in the next one, we'll cover 3 and 4, and so on. So this is going to be a 5-week series where we go through all of the episodes of this horror series, and this is the first time we've done it, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I also like to point out that if you are listening to this episode first, I give you so much credit because you're not following all the other sheep. Like you're just like doing your own thing.
Yeah.
And you know what? I hope to be like you one day.
It's good to have heroes.
Yeah.
They give you something to aspire to.
And you're my hero. You got the freedom. You got the freedom in your heart. You live for the dream, man. You live for it. All right, that's all I got.
All right. Well, on that positive and uplifting note from Bryce, which sounds weird to say.
Also, you're kind of dumb, so don't get too... No, just kidding. Sorry.
All right, we're going to play the spoiler warning just so that we don't disappoint anyone, and then get into a very spoiler-heavy discussion of episodes 1 and 2 of The Haunting of Hill House.
Warning, warning, warning. Spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. This is your warning. Warning, warning, warning. Spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. This is your warning. If it's not obvious enough. Warning, spoilers.
Okay, so again, this is a pretty different format than what we normally do each week. And so for these episodes where we're talking about specific episodes, I'm going to do a quick recap of the 2 episodes that we watched. And then we're going to talk about things from each one, how they relate to each other, how the story's developing, specific scenes that we liked, and so on and so forth.
We should also point out real quick that this is also difficult for you and I because we are planners.
Yes.
We are creatures of habit for sure.
Absolutely.
And so doing something new, like I'm feeling loose, right? You know, I'm feeling ready. You know, like,
yeah.
But I'm nervous.
Yeah. You got the adrenaline. So, episode 1.
Yep.
In 1992, the family who is the focus of the story moved into a giant creepy house called Hill House because of previous owners. The parents are house flippers, and they are going to live there, renovate it, and then sell it for a profit. The daughter is crying, saying she keeps seeing a woman at the end of her bed. And by daughter, I mean youngest daughter, whose name is Nell. At a later point, you see a scene where the dad comes into the oldest son's room in the middle of the night and tells him that they have to leave immediately and not to open his eyes as they do so. He loads him into the car where they find all the other siblings but not the mom, and then they drive away. The kids yell for their mom, but the dad won't stop. During the scenes that happened in 1992, you see some other creepy things from when the kids are living in the house that mostly involve the youngest sister Nell and the youngest brother Luke having creepy experiences. You also see a sort of where are they now of all the kids in the present time. Steven is set up to be kind of the main character. He's the narrator from before, in the beginning of the series, because he wrote a book about their experiences growing up in Hill House. He's also become a paranormal investigator who doesn't actually believe in any of it, but who uses the stories he hears in his fiction. Luke, the youngest brother, is a drug addict who has been in and out of rehab. Nell, the one who was haunted the most as a kid, seems to be just generally crazy and kind of not really taken seriously by her siblings. The episode ends with Steven going home from an investigation to discover that his youngest brother Luke was in the process of robbing his apartment, presumably for drug money. And then they decide to let it go, and Steven goes inside, where he finds Nell in the apartment. Then he gets a call from his dad informing him that Nell is dead. Hell of an ending, right?
Yeah, that was insane, dude.
Yeah. Okay, so episode 2. Episode 2 was a lot more backstory of the characters and a lot less haunting. There was one scene with Theodora and Shirley hearing banging in the walls, but that was about it as far as anything supernatural in the flashbacks. It's probably important because it shows that it wasn't just Nell, but there was also not a lot of haunting in the episode. There was also a weird flashback story where Shirley found kittens and was trying to nurse them back to life, but they were all diseased and kind of weird. Not really sure the significance of it. In the present, though, you found out that Nell killed herself in Hill House at the end of the previous episode. A lot of the episode is the rest of the family responding to that. Also, they have more recent flashbacks of their relationships, like Shirley getting mad at Steven for making money off a book about their traumatic upbringing, everyone getting mad at Luke for being an addict and a screw-up, and other family interactions. The most interesting part, though, was at the end. Shirley is a mortician, and she's elected to prep Nell's body for the viewing before burial. As she works on the body, it's pretty gory, and it's nasty.
Yeah.
Yeah, extra gory. That's something you should watch out for if you have a weak stomach. She goes to leave the morgue at the very end, and she sees her mom's corpse laying next to Nell's. But then she turns on the light, and it's not there. Then, as she's going back upstairs, you see the model home that she wants to build someday is sitting on the table, and a light turns on inside of it. And that's the end of the episode.
Yeah, the light is the front door light that flickers. And so, earlier in that episode, the mom says, when the light flashes twice, you gotta come inside. And so that model house flashes light twice. Yeah.
Okay. I didn't catch that. Nice.
Yeah. Katie caught that, actually.
Yeah.
And then I rewound it and realized that that's what it was.
Yeah. I like it.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's nice to be on this side of the episode where we can talk about bad things.
You mean spoiler things?
Oh, okay, yeah, I thought we could just talk about, I thought we could just say whatever we wanted on this side.
Absolutely not.
I got nothing. Yeah, so I do have to say, the scene where Shirley is opening up, that's super gory, but I really appreciate it. I'm not going to get specific into the scene quite yet, but I really appreciate it because it's just kind of cool that Netflix has the ability to put that out. It's a Netflix show, and they're like, you could do whatever you like on here, up to obvious certain extents, but
yeah, it kind of reminds me of HBO back in the day when they're like, we're doing our own thing and we don't have any of the rules that you guys have, so we're just going to see whatever we want to do and see if we can get away with it. So did you do some fun facts for this one?
So, a couple fun facts about this. Okay, so kind of like what you said in the first episode, this is loosely based off of the original novel by Shirley Jackson. But in the original novel, Eleanor, Theo, and Luke are not siblings, and they did not grow up in the house on the hill.
Oh, wow.
In the Hill House. And to my understanding, it's saying that the characters Shirley and Steven were actually invented for this TV show.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah,
There's also a movie that came out about it, apparently kind of based off of the book, called The Haunting, which I think that we should watch next, after the series, just to kind of finish it off,
Yeah, definitely.
And I'm interested to see if Shirley and Steven are in that, but I think that from what I was reading, I think it's based off of, I think they invented it for this show. I could be, but the character Shirley that was created. So Shirley, basically, you have the 5 siblings. You have Theo, Eleanor, Luke, Shirley, and Steven. And Shirley was invented for the show. She was named after the author of the original novel, Shirley Jackson.
Oh, well, that's kind of nice.
Yeah. So another one, this is kind of like a little Easter egg, but I thought was just kind of interesting. Not necessarily a fact about the actual production, but in the first episode, when they're in 1992, they're at the house. Luke is the youngest boy. He's a twin. He's playing in his treehouse, and there is an ET metal lunchbox in front of him, which is kind of fun. Like kind of a fun thing to add, because Henry Thomas, who was in E.T., was the main character in E.T., he plays a young Hugh Crane, so he plays the dad in the 1990s era.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Yeah. So I just thought that was kind of a fun thing that they added there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think he's tired of E.T. stuff?
Probably not, man. Look, that's classic, dude. I mean, like, he made a classic... He came out strong. I mean, he was also in Legends of the Fall.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if you've seen that. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good movie.
Yeah, he's doing all right.
Has Brad Pitt in it.
I'm out.
He dies in World War I.
Just because we're post spoilers for this episode doesn't mean we're post spoilers for everything.
And then Brad Pitt hit 2 of his wives die. And it was like, you're just bad luck, dude.
Yeah. Definitely.
You said spoiler warnings. I can say what spoiler to any movie I want to.
Fool me once, shame on you. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, very nice. Normally, when we're on the other side of the spoiler warning, we talk about like things that were especially good or bad, or things that stood out to us as positive or negative about the movie. And we also talk about specific scenes. Yeah. So, do you have anything that was like that really like grabbed you as notable in either direction for this series?
Yeah, so far, some of the things I enjoyed was it seems, especially, so we're talking the whole series, but specifically in the first episode, not knowing what to expect, like I felt like anything could jump out at any given moment.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like they did anything. I'm not saying this in a negative way. It was, we live in the era of the jump scares.
Yeah.
And, with how bitter I was at them at the beginning of our podcast journey, like I'm starting to enjoy them more, because it's like you at least know some sort of action's happening at that point, where we watch some horror movies and it's just like, oh my god, at least give me a jump scare here. But
yeah.
So like it just seems like, say for instance, when Nellis is screaming at her bed, her dad comes in and checks on her, like you're just expecting something to kind of jump out at that point. We haven't seen the series before. We don't know what to expect.
Yeah.
And it's just like, and so like I was almost anxious while watching it, and I loved it.
Yeah.
Because it was just like, that's great. You're making me feel, anxious just from watching this show.
Yeah. Well, I think the first episode especially, and it didn't happen as much in the second episode, which but whatever. They did a really good job of peppering in creepy stuff. Right. Just often enough to keep you guessing and on the edge of your seat.
Yeah.
And so that was something I really liked, because it had sort of at the end of that scene, there was the sort of the statue-looking face in the background that was like coming up towards the girl from behind her while she was going back to sleep. And that was like the big payoff of that whole scene, where you were waiting for the jump scare the whole time. And then there was the dark kind of shadow woman that was leaning over her when she was asleep on the couch.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was that red door with the moving shadows underneath it. And then it's just like over and over, just enough to let you know that there's something going on in the house, but nothing that's so out of the ordinary that you can explain it, or that you even have like a frame of reference. Because, for all you know, it could be like a crazy person in the house doing that. It could be a ghost. It could be multiple ghosts. It's leaving it vague so that your imagination can run wild, and that keeps you engaged in sort of in that uncomfortable mode that makes for good horror. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, even which I think I have more scenes from the first episode just because of kind of what we talked about. But I mean, it went from like the creepy scene that with Nell screaming, dad coming in, keeping her, she's fine. And then next thing you know, Theo, she's talking in her sleep and saying like weird things, but it was almost like kind of funny because you didn't know what, why or what, and I can't remember specifics of what she said, but it didn't seem too serious at that point.
Yeah.
But at that point, you also didn't know how they all ended up.
Right.
So, I thought that was kind of fun to be able to do that, make you feel anxious, scared, go by that. It was a little funny, and then go on from there. But so those were like the opening scenes was by far my favorite so far. I really enjoyed the scene in the first episode where the dad comes and gets Stevie from his room to leave the house. So he runs in and wakes Stevie up. He's like, we gotta go. Something's wrong. We gotta go. Then he looks out and he sees something. No, we don't know what, but he sees something. He shuts the door, locks it, and the doorknob just slowly turns to the right and then slowly to the left, like someone's trying to get in, which I'd be like scooting my pants for sure at that point. Yeah. Well, whatever it is.
Yeah, and I mentioned in the sort of the kickoff episode for all of this where we talked about just sort of the series on the whole, where I feel like it's good writing, like deep writing for the show and in the story. And one thing about that scene is I feel like it's one that's going to keep coming back up. I feel like that's a scene that's really important and that is going to get referenced again and again throughout the series. And sort of the explanation of that scene, I think, is going to end up being kind of the grand reveal of things. So to have that in the very first episode, to where that's sort of always in the back of your mind, I thought was just a really good way of setting up the story. But the way that they executed the scene and how intense it was really good as well.
Yeah. So another thing, and this isn't necessarily scene specific, but I actually enjoyed cutting. So at first, when they were cutting back and forth from the future to the from the past to the current, just back and forth, it was almost kind of confusing at times. Yeah. But once you figured out the formula of the show, which knowing that's something that, because I didn't know anything about this show going into it. I mean, we heard from people saying like it's good, you should watch it, but they didn't tell any details of it, So I didn't know what to expect, and at first I was almost thinking like it was happening too much, like going back and forth. So it was, but as it went on, I actually enjoyed it more because that was a better way of keeping me interested.
Yeah.
And like I said, there's scenes in here where it's kind of boring drama talk, but it's also the type of TV show that makes you wonder, like everything that they're doing has a point. That might not be true, but it just makes me think that everything they're saying, or for the most part 90% of what they're saying, has to like have some sort of meaning to it.
Yeah, you feel like you need to pay attention.
Right. Yeah.
And that was one thing I really liked about it, was just sort of the overall unfolding of what was happening and how they never just straight up really told you much of anything. And, sort of from that very beginning scene that you talked about in the first episode, that is sort of the younger girl who's, appears to be being haunted. And then it cuts to this random guy in the future who seems to be a paranormal investigator. But then you find out he's the author about the book on Hill House.
Yeah.
And then you find out that he was actually one of the kids from the opening scene.
And who claims like he had never seen a ghost.
Exactly. Before. And so they're saying that he's saying that he doesn't believe in the supernatural and hasn't ever had an experience. But I thought that was such a great twist, because you've definitely seen stuff in the house that makes you think there was stuff going on.
Right.
But now he's claiming he hasn't had the experience. And so that I thought was a really good twist. And it just, it's a good story so far. I'm very, very intrigued by it.
Yeah. They're doing pretty good. Like I said, I'm definitely interested to see where it's going from here.
Yeah. I also really like the mystery of the mom.
Yeah. Because you find out in that second episode, like, she gets the really bad headaches, and like it just came on all of a sudden.
Yeah, and I think it was in the first episode where they made a comment about how the mom was mentally ill, but the dad was calling it a haunting.
Oh, yeah.
And so, like, that was a way that they had made sense of it. But I don't think the youngest daughter, Nell, would have had that opinion.
Yeah.
And based on some of the stuff you saw, you kind of don't have that opinion either. So you wonder if it's mutually exclusive or if both were happening or exactly what's going on there.
Well, so, I mean, like, kind of two things, two ways of thinking for this. One, like, the dad was talking in the first episode, like, about the tabloids and maybe not being able to keep his kids after what happened there and all that. And so makes you wonder if, like, he was saying that for that reason, specifically, like saying that she was mentally ill instead. I also have the theory that the mom is the one who's doing the haunting. That's just my theory. So, like, well, I say haunting, but, like, she's like the creepy lady standing at the end of the bed kind of thing. Or on the couch. So, like, Nell is sleeping on the couch because she wanted to get out of her bedroom because she was getting too scared. And then next thing you know, like, she's sleeping on the couch, the mom gets up, walks away, and the next thing you know, the creepy woman is there and, like, kind of hanging over her bed in a way. I don't know. Yeah. It's just my theory. It has something to do with it. That's just my theory.
Yeah, I like that. Another scene I liked from the first episode that I thought was really good was after you find out Nell is going back to the house, and then you've seen all the different siblings sort of in their different places.
Yeah.
And then as she's back in the house, all of a sudden they all, like, jump awake in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And then one of the sisters says Nell's in the bedroom.
Yep.
I thought that was a really good way of reintroducing the problem of what was happening before and sort of bringing them all back together against that common threat.
Yeah, because it was also at 3:03 a.m., which I wonder if that was something to do with it.
Yeah. I wonder if that was the time that it was happening.
It happened originally.
In the beginning.
Yeah.
We should go back and look at that. But yeah, and then also that scene at the end of episode 1 where Steven's going back to his apartment and Nell is there standing alone in the dark.
Yeah.
And then he gets that phone call from his dad who says that Nell's dead. And then she opens her mouth and, like, her face goes that, like, dark ashen color.
Yeah.
And then she disappears. I really like that scene a lot.
Yeah, because it's like, well, now you've seen a ghost, man. Like, yeah. It's because, him claiming
that. He's had his supernatural experience now.
Yeah, exactly.
But one question I did have is I noticed in the second episode, there was one point where Theo and Shirley are in the house as kids in a flashback. And Theo's accusing Shirley of banging on the wall and calling her name. And then she's denying it, and the walls start shaking. But then the dad comes in and says it's the pipes. Yeah. But then his face warps the same way Nell's did at the end of the first episode. And then Shirley wakes up in the modern day. So was that supposed to be all a dream or, like, partially a dream? Or was it an actual memory?
That's a good question.
I thought was really, really different, especially because episode 2 was so light on the haunting stuff.
Yeah, man, that's a good question because it seemed like with some of the flashbacks, like that's how it was. Like they would see something creepy and then they'd all of a sudden wake up in a panic. I know Steven did that when he was at the beginning of episode 1 when he was sleeping in that bed. Yeah, and it's almost like it's a flashback, but it's not. It's really a dream. That's a good question. I'm not sure. That's my roundabout way of saying it.
So anyway, yeah, lots of interesting stuff going on.
So like the second episode I didn't have too many favorite scenes because the second one was almost like they were explaining more. They had to explain a lot of the things in the first episode. I felt like they were kind of explaining why Shirley is why she's the mortician, and it was because the guy at the funeral like kind of took her up and realized that her mom didn't look all tore up, which apparently she did when she died. So like that kind of may explain why she was that. Steven writing, there was something in there about him writing.
Well, and all the sort of, that was his way of kind of making sense of it or whatever, but then it was all the drama around Shirley being upset with him because he sort of hadn't asked
right
to do it ahead of time, and he published the book and he made a bunch of money off of what to the rest of them was this really like traumatic story.
Yeah, but it just kind of so it kind of explains like in a way why like at least Shirley and Steven are the way that they are.
Yeah,
and why Nell seemed like she was going crazy was because it seems like she was haunted the most so far. Yeah. So I have a feeling that it's going to get more into why Luke is a drug addict and Theo is wearing gloves and all that.
Yeah. It definitely seems like there's going to be a lot of sort of filling in the backstory as the series goes along.
Yeah.
One question I had for you though. Did you make any sense out of the cat thing?
Oh, real quick. It's when they wake up, don't they say Nellie is in the red room?
Oh,
or do
maybe
they say
so.
Bedroom?
Maybe it
they
was
said red room, it was talking about the red door room.
Yeah, probably
but
so.
I don't
that
know.
Would make more sense. Yeah.
But, I don't know about the cats, man. That was just kind of a strange thing. I don't know if because it's not like Shirley ended up growing up to become someone who takes care of animals.
Yeah.
So it was just I don't know. It's the honest answer. I don't know the real reason for adding that.
Well, and so she thought they were all dead, but then they weren't, and the one opened its eyes, and its eyes were real weird and almost like haunted looking, but then you get the impression that the mom killed him, so to get rid of him. So I don't have a good explanation other than maybe it was showing that she and the mom didn't have a great relationship, but
and that the mom has the headaches and all that. Yeah, that's true. I bet that's probably why.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's a lot. I have a few random thoughts to run by you, but do you have any other like scenes or anything before that?
No, I think my favorite scene from the second episode would be the porch light blinking at the end.
Yeah.
Like I think that's definitely meaning something.
I think it means with that coming immediately after her seeing like the vision of the mom, I think that definitely has some significance. Yeah. No, I mean I'm thoroughly impressed with the show so far. I'm actually pretty happy with it. So yeah,
I hope we're not let down.
Yeah, same. So, well, then we're going to get to my random thoughts.
All right.
Random thought number 1.
Yeah.
I like how Theo is supposed to be like a badass, but she drinks Chardonnay like a sorority girl. Like, if you're a badass, don't drink white wine. That's a life rule. Okay.
That's rules.
Random thought number 2. On the topic of Theo, that club in Boston where she went and was like dancing is everything I would never want to be near. So, just for future reference, if you're ever like, Daniel and I should go to this place, ask yourself, is it anything like that club in Boston from this show? If the answer is yes, it's something like that, then we need to go somewhere else.
Okay.
Number 3. It was so weird that Steven was just okay with Luke robbing him.
Weird, but I think it was also like guilt. Like I picked up like it was like a guilt thing. Like I think there's some guilt thing that Luke has over Steven other than being a drug addict.
Maybe so. But for the record, if I come home and I see my brother walking down the stairs at my apartment complex holding something that belongs to me that's very expensive, and I knew that the door was locked when I left, we'd have some words. But they just like bro hugged and went on with the day.
Yeah, that's true. But it was almost like he was. I don't know. I don't know if that was tied to Shirley, Luke showing up for Nell's wedding, and Shirley saying like, "This is all the money you're ever going to get from me," like just really having to be kind of shitty toward him, which we don't know what Luke did, you know, there to get that, but I think for me it was just Steven's just kind of like, oh well, life's shitty as it is right now anyway, can't get any worse. Brother comes walking down. I mean, because it explains Nell's missing. Then you figure out that Stevie's going through a divorce. Yeah, and then he shows up and his brother's walking down with his stuff. And yeah, I mean, it looked like a broken man is where I'm getting at. Maybe so. Maybe he has the guilt because he wrote the story about the family and
Didn't share the money?
Something like that.
Yeah.
So.
It's still weird. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Most of it, other than the freaking cats, most of it made sense and was like intriguing. That scene for me was just kind of like, really?
Yeah.
So, well, all right. I think that's about it then. I guess our job now is to go watch the next 2 episodes and come back and do another one of these.
All right.
All right. Talk to y'all next time.
Smile later.
And that's it for today's episode. If you've listened this far, then thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed it. We're always looking for new ideas, so if you have any questions, comments, or movie suggestions, please send us an email at thehorrificpod@gmail.com, or feel free to comment on or message our Facebook page. Just search for The Horrific Podcast. Thanks for listening.
And so doing something new, like I'm feeling loose, right? I'm feeling ready, but I'm nervous.
Yeah. You got the adrenaline. You got the show juice.
Yeah, I had the nervous scoots for all day today, dude. I didn't know what was going to happen with this episode.
And that is truly horrific.
Oh.
Oh gosh, this is going well.
Our t-shirts that we'll get one day are going to say, "The Horrific, you'll get the nervous scoots."
Or maintain.
Yeah.